Bali versus Oahu. Which island is right for you in 2025? Let's find out. So the first thing to consider with cost is going to be flying to each destination, because if you're flying from America like me, it's going to be a lot quicker and a lot cheaper to fly to Oahu. Usually you can fly from like somewhere in California. It's about 5-6 hour flight. Maybe you can pay a couple $100s or something. And if you fly to California, you can fly there for a couple $100s or something like that. So it's going to be significantly cheaper and significantly quicker to fly to Oahu direct or with one connection. If you're flying to Bali, Indonesia, you might have several connections. It could be like a 24-hour travel day one way or less, but you're going to pay a lot more money because you're going to have to fly to like LA or fly from LA to like Tokyo or fly to Singapore or Bangkok and then fly to Bali. So it's going to be, I think, at least 2 to 3 times as long of a flight, and the price might be like about 3 times the cost at least as well. Unsurprisingly, once you reach each island, the cost situation is flip-flopped because things are significantly more expensive on Oahu, Hawaii. They're not maybe quite as expensive as some people make it seem, but Bali is a much more budget-friendly destination. For example, when talking about accommodation, I think in the Waikiki area, if you're budget savvy, you can find something for maybe like $80 to $100 a night, maybe a little bit less if you do like a hostel or something. Whereas in Bali, if you're budget savvy, I think you can find something for like $20 to $30 a night, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, depending on like which popular area you're going to. For places like Canggu and Ubud, some popular destinations, I think that would be a really good deal personally. And then for other costs like food, I think Oahu is comparable to places like LA and New York, maybe a little slightly more expensive than LA. So your standard meal, I would estimate, is going to cost anywhere like from like 10 to 15 on the very cheap end, and it could be like 15 to 22 on like the more moderate to upper level end. Whereas in Bali, I think at a nicer restaurant, like a cute cafe, more trendy, I would expect it to be about a third or half the price of Western prices. And if you eat local food in Bali, which we'll talk more about the food later, I would think it's going to be like significantly cheaper, like $3 to $5 per person, maybe 3 to 6 or something for a decent portion, depending on where you go. So that's worth considering for cost, flight, accommodation, food, and activities. This will all kind of apply as such. So now that that's out of the way, let's talk about some of the fun things, activities, because both of these islands offer so many great things to see and do. Let's start off with hiking. Now, if you're like me and you like to explore and adventure, it doesn't really get much better than Oahu. Oahu is like my favorite hiking destination in the entire world. You can do ridge hikes, you can do like jungly sort of hikes, you can do hikes to the beach, like coastal hikes. You can do easy hikes, difficult hikes. It's just my favorite hiking place in the world. It really cannot be stated. Whereas Bali, because it's in Indonesia, I don't think it's like hiking is as big of a thing there. You still have beautiful areas you can check out, maybe some like little walking trails here and there, but they're not like proper hikes. So if you're into hiking and outdoor adventure and exploration, I think Oahu is better personally. Now, surfing is something you can do on both islands. Obviously, it'll be a much more expensive on Oahu. You can just rent a board there for probably like the same price that you can do lessons in Bali. Bali, you can do lessons like I think 2 hours for like $30. I imagine in Oahu it's like at least 3 times the price for 2 hours. So keep that in mind, but you can do surfing on both. So that's really cool. And snorkeling, you can do this on both islands, I guess, but I think it's way better on Oahu. The water just in general is more clear. There's more tropical fish in and around the beaches. You can do snorkeling in and around Bali, but on the actual island itself, there's really not that many places. I think snorkeling is a good idea because even the areas with the clearest water are going to be more wavy and it's going to be a little bit harder to see under the water. You can do many more activities on both of these islands. I can't cover them all for you, but one of my favorite in the water on Oahu is to kayak to the Mokulua Islands. These 2 beautiful little twin islands, and the water here is beautiful. You can snorkel around the island and explore it and even go in this like little natural infinity pool. You can also do some cliff jumping at China Walls on Oahu, which I'm showing you right here, and you can see some wildlife including monk seals, spinner dolphins, and so much more. But you can also see these spinner dolphins in Bali, which is really cool. We did a boat tour from Lovina and saw so many of them and were able to swim and spot them from the boat. Really freaking cool. But what Bali also has regarding wildlife is the long-tailed macaques. You cannot see these on Oahu. And you can also visit some hot springs and do some cliff jumps at Aling Aling waterfall. So cool. Now let's talk about beauty. So both Oahu and Bali are gorgeous islands, some of the most beautiful places in the world. But I think it really comes down to like one separation, which is I think mountains and beaches. Oahu is on another level. The beaches are just so beautiful here. You have that beautiful white sand and blue water, whereas in Bali, maybe because of it's more volcanic, a lot of the sand is more black or charcoaly kind of color, or more of like a brown color, and the water is a little bit more murky in some of the areas, except for Uluwatu. Uluwatu is the exception. It's really beautiful and has cliffs and really beautiful blue water there as well. There's some other beaches scattered throughout the island, but that's the main one I would compare.
However, the beaches are really beautiful at sunset, especially in the Canggu area of Bali, but the mountains on Oahu are something I need to talk about some more. They are so beautiful, especially if you go to Ho'omaluia Botanical Gardens. You can walk around and see the beautiful green, lush, and extremely textured Ko'olau Mountains. I've never seen mountains like this anywhere in the world. I think it's the wind coming off of the coast. Just look how epic and green and beautiful these mountains are. Bali still has mountains, of course, and they are really beautiful, but they're not quite as epic or exotic, in my opinion.
But what Bali has that Oahu doesn't have is, one, the rice fields. And people might say, oh, rice fields, who would travel this far just to see rice fields? But they are so beautiful and majestic, and they're just a vibe, guys. Some of them are unbelievably gorgeous, and you can like walk through and get lost. It's kind of like the hiking that you can do in Bali versus Oahu, which is different. And it also has volcanoes that are still more active, and they are a little bit more epic. A lot of the volcanoes on Oahu are like extinct, and you can still hike up them, but they don't have the same mystique or feel that the ones in Bali do. And the waterfalls in Bali are unbelievable. I mean, look at this waterfall at Second Pool Waterfalls, and these other ones you can explore and find on the island. Nothing in Oahu compares to these waterfalls. There's some that are kind of cool and they're pretty in their own right, but Bali is just a whole other level when it comes to waterfalls. All right, and next let's talk about culture, because a lot of people want to travel somewhere to get a new perspective or see new things and open their mind or experience new parts of life. Now, both have unique individual culture. Obviously, like there is still like Native Hawaiians in Hawaii, thankfully, and they still have preserved a lot of their tradition, which is really cool. And this like plays through in some of the things you can see and do on the island, and like some of the words that you can still see and hear. But obviously, Bali, Indonesia is a different country. It's a Hindu island, which is like an odd occurrence in Indonesia because a lot of the areas are more Muslim. So there's so many temples that you can see. You can still see some like temples and stuff in Oahu, but those aren't like Hawaiian. Those are more Eastern Asian influenced, whereas the Balinese temples are strong, like individual Balinese feel. You can see people dressing more in like different clothing than Western clothing on the daily in Bali, and I think it's a more culturally enriching experience personally, but I still love the Polynesian and Hawaiian culture that you can see. So Hawaii is still a cultural experience too. It certainly can be if you try and make it so, but I think it's like impossible to not have a cultural experience when visiting Bali, especially if you go to like some places outside the main tourist areas and see some temples and things like that. And let's talk about food. So both have great food as well. A lot of people love Hawaiian food, things like poke, things like musubi, things like lokomoko. And if you're more of like a meat eater, you can try sort of like more pork dishes and more fish and things like that. I'm vegan, so I really couldn't dabble into that. But Balinese food, it's going to be a lot of Indonesian food. So you're going to have things like mie goreng, which is like fried noodles. You can have fried rice. You can have satay, which is like a Southeast Asian dish, which I absolutely love. You can try lots of different curries. And so much more. Nasi campur, which is like a big mixed plate. So I think, again, Balinese food, for me, it has more spices, more variety, and more incredible flavors. So for me, Bali takes the cake. Good analogy maybe, or good saying. When it comes to food, Hawaiian food, it's still, again, similar to the culture. You can get a new food experience. It's really good. I have eaten lots of delicious food on Hawaii or Oahu, Hawaii, but Bali just has another level for food. All right, now let's cover transportation, because I think both of these islands are best experienced when you get a little bit off of the beaten path, you get away from the tourist sites, and you go to some beautiful destinations that will just totally blow your mind. And I think this might be easier for the average tourist in Oahu because you can take public transportation. They have a really good bus option called the Holo bus, and it can take you not to everywhere in the island, but a lot of really cool places that are some of my favorites, such as Lanakai Beach, Coco Head Crater, and some other hikes that you can access on the bus as well. So that's really cool. If you don't want to rent a car, I made actually a whole video of a week in Oahu without a rental car, showing you how you can best experience the island without spending like hundreds or even thousands of dollars, or $1,000 or something if you are on Oahu for a considerable amount of time. So that's worth considering for Oahu. For Bali, on the other hand, there is no public transportation. You're going to have to hire a taxi or a private driver to get around from place to place, and that could be probably still cheaper than renting a car in Oahu, but it might not be the best, like give you the best adventurous feeling. Whereas in Bali, you can also rent a scooter to get around. I wouldn't recommend renting a car. It sounds like a little crazy. The roads there are more narrow and there's lots of traffic. So a scooter is the best thing to do if possible, but don't rent a scooter unless you feel comfortable driving one. Maybe you can find a way to take it slow or learn somewhere in your own country, because they drive on the left-hand side. There's lots of traffic and the rules are very different than in America. So if you feel comfortable renting a scooter, it can be like $5 to $7 a day, which is that's like cheaper than taking the bus for a day to a few different destinations in Oahu. So that's transportation, and it definitely plays a part in your experience. So that's all for the video, guys. What do you think? Bali or Oahu? Which island would you rather visit in 2025? Let me know down in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.